No, no, I'm good. It's working. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very special welcome to all those who have braved Ludhiana's snarling traffic today, because clearly tonight's discussion on India and the world was worth dodging a few potholes. We often say India's biggest export is talent. Our first speaker tonight has been exporting India's diplomacy to the world for over 3 decades, from Canada to Pakistan, from Poland to Lithuania, and even to the World Bank in Washington, D.C. He's been in the Prime Minister's office advising Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, and he's written a book with the title that perfectly suits his Pakistan posting, Anger Management. Please welcome the man who has turned. Our second speaker has spent over 40 years shaping India's strategic defense and foreign policy footprint, often in places that required both nerves of steel and the patience of a monk. From being India's ambassador to Japan and Mexico, to leading our consulates in Shanghai and Sydney, he's been at the table for some of the most complex negotiations with China and beyond. And if that wasn't enough, he speaks 9 languages, which means he can politely tell you you're wrong in more ways than most of us can count. Please welcome the man steering India's premier defense think tank, Ambassador Sujan R. Chinoy. Ladies and gentlemen, between them, these two have represented India across continents, advised prime ministers, negotiated with the toughest players on the global stage, and yes, still managed to write books, give lectures, and stay impeccably dressed. Tonight, they will help us understand not just India and the world, the way ahead, but also why the way ahead might just be brighter, stronger, and a little more strategic than we think. Our moderator for the evening, Mr. Dinesh Kumar, may we please have him on the stage. May I please request Mr. J.R. Singhal and Mr. Kar Singh Ahuja to give a bouquet to the speakers. May I please invite Mr. Gaurav Munjal on the stage to present a bouquet to the moderator. So Dinesh ji, the stage is all yours, sir.
Right, thank you very much. First of all, a very warm evening to all of you, a bit rainy and drizzly. I would like to make a couple of observations and remarks before we start this thing. You see, the, I think the Indian diplomats have probably one of the most difficult job really to do, because we live in a neighborhood which is not at all been pleasant. At best, it's been a no war, no peace situation, with some phases of maybe some pleasantness. But largely, it's been a very challenging neighborhood and a very, very challenging world. Now, we have our diplomats posted all over the world, of course, but to be posted and to be heading missions as ambassadors or high commissioners to countries like Pakistan, China, Japan, uh, all our immediate neighboring countries, to the US, Israel, are very challenging assignments. And you really have to be amongst the better of the best in order to get those postings. I mean, it's not just about getting them. I mean, you really have to be on the top. So we are really very honored and privileged to have two such officers of the Foreign Service who have had them, but for the country for that matter. So you're looking at the two of our finest diplomats, and it's really an honor and a privilege to have you both, sir. I would like to start with you, Ambassador Chinoy, and ask you about if you could kind of decode what's going on between India and the US. 25 years of a fairly decent relationship, unprecedented in Indo-US relations in the last 78 years or whatever. And then suddenly we have this major change taking place over barely 3 months. Tariffs, all kinds of statements, remarks, not looking good at all. So what now, and can the situation be salvaged?
Look, firstly, let me thank the Ludhiana Management Association, Mrs. Kang in particular, and all of you for this great invitation and opportunity to be with you this evening in this wonderful city. And also to express great delight in being alongside my friend, Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, but also Mr. Dinesh Kumar, because not many of you may know that I've known this gentleman, this erudite gentleman for his esteemed father, late father was my colleague in the embassy. So I have known him virtually all my life, and it's therefore a particular pleasure to be here this evening. As far as the United States is concerned, you're all aware that the India-US relationship is all important. It's always been very important, regardless of the nature of the relationship. And when you look back in the past, there was a period when we spoke of India and the US being estranged democracies. So, and estranged we were, because when we achieved independence, India under Pandit Nehru had opted for strategic autonomy of a certain type, which was clearly in those days, characterized by our non-aligned status and the fact that India didn't want to be in any camp during the Cold War. But then India was not a very big economy, and we needed even help with regard to food grains at a point of time in the or Cieto, which were the two, the Philippines Pact and the Baghdad Pact, as they were called, and we had stayed away from that. So we were seen then as a country that was not really doing the bidding of the West. And the West had a certain control over India as well in terms of the UN Security Council playing up issues related to the subcontinent. So we've been through tough times. We went through tougher times in 1965 when the United States sanctioned both India and Pakistan. In 1971, it was a blatant, stand that the US took with Pakistan, and the USS Enterprise, as you know, steamed into the Bay of Bengal. The Americans, Nixon and Kissinger, had even tried to convince Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong, particularly through Zhou Enlai, that the United States should actually, sit aside and not do anything if China were to attack India or open a second front. The Chinese were wise enough not to do that. We've been through a lot, actually. 1974, sanctioned again, and I wouldn't call it a cul-de-sac. It's not. There should be a way out of this current, difficult situation. It appears to be like an impasse, but I don't think it is a totally hopeless situation. It's related to partly the nature of the leadership in the United States today, to do with things like his desire, the president's desire for certain acclaim as a peacemaker. There are other substantive issues to do with trade, particularly with regard to some vulnerable sectors of our economy. And there could be a slew of other issues as well. But I do believe that this is an extraordinarily important relationship. US defense equipment is valuable. It is of great use to India. It adds an edge to our defense capabilities, particularly the large expeditionary aircraft that we've acquired, the C-130, the C-17, even helicopters like the Chinook are very important for our lift capabilities in what you call the lateral terminal, border roads reaching up to our border posts. And they were particularly useful in the aftermath of the bloodletting at Galwan. So this relationship, based on a certain kind of technological convergence, a convergence about our part of the paradigm, nothing fundamentally has shifted at the functional level. Though there is a lot of friction in the media as well, and when pronouncements have been made at multiple levels, which gives the kind of impression that the relationship has come completely apart. But if you look at the politics of Washington, particularly Mr. Trump himself, you cannot put it past him to do a volte-face on this as well. He has done a volte-face on virtually everything else. He has most recently done a volte-face on Russia by going after Putin after initially mollycoddling him. Then he has done a volte-face with China after initially going after China, but now kind of reaching out to China. So this may be a phase in my view, but we should keep up the engagement and the efforts, the contacts, and keep the decibel level low at both ends. And that's where I would end my opening remarks. Thank you.
Right, thank you. If I may turn to Ambassador Bisaria, I have a similar question, but it's related to Pakistan. You have served as High Commissioner to Pakistan, and you were the last High Commissioner so far that we've had, and you left under a very specific circumstance when Article 370 was abrogated. Of late, we've had Operation Sandur. We've had very belligerent remarks being made by their military's line and continuing to make similar statements and threats. India has responded to the Pahalgam terror attack by cutting off or putting in abeyance, the Indus Water Treaty, apart from, of course, warning that, redrawing the red lines and saying nuclear blackmail will not be tolerated. So where are India-Pakistan relations headed? I mean, it's always been roller coaster, and there have been so many lows in it. This arguably might be the lowest low so far. Is it going to get any worse? And do you think it could probably improve? And finally, I mean, are we capable of having a civilized relationship with Pakistan, or is it going to be what Mr. J.N. Dixit described, a flawed inheritance that we just have to live with?
Thank you, Dinesh. I think before we come to Pakistan, let me just add to what Sujan said and thank the Ludhiana Management Association for getting us together, and particularly uh, the President, Ms. Kang, and all of you for interested in geopolitics, is because this geopolitical flux is also knocking on your door. So uh, I have been amazed by how much geopolitical events impact business, impact finance, and the tariffs will be affecting not just the bigger outer-facing businesses, but even the smaller businesses, because the global value chains come into play, the global supply chains come into play, and all the geopolitics that we see around us hits our specific industries, specific businesses with diverse pathways, and that's a very strong reason for a management association to be interested in global affairs and geopolitics. But also before I talk of Pakistan, just to add to what Sujan said about the US relationship, I would argue that the US relationship goes beyond the issue of tariffs, beyond the issue of trade, into very strong areas in the last 25 years, as you mentioned, areas of defense, areas of technology, areas of geopolitical alignment. So it's a deeper relationship. It goes deeper than trade, and it goes deeper than Trump. So really speaking, I think India has to be the adult in the room when we deal with this relationship. It's like dealing with a petulant child, an unpredictable child in the White House. So I think we have to be balanced and calm about dealing with this relationship and not get into questions you asked. But the fundamental point remains, and we saw with Operation Sindoor, that it's been a very difficult relationship. Today, that this relationship is 78 years old, and we haven't found a solution so far. And I have been arguing that if you ask me one reason why the India-Pakistan relationship has not improved in all these years, it is because of the highly abnormal nature of the Pakistan state, the structural problem of the Pakistan state, that the identity crisis that continues till this day, and the fact that Pakistan became abnormal in its early years and has been captured by a military elite which is promoting its own interests rather than the interests of the Pakistani people. And we saw this play out this summer in Operation Sindoor. We saw the horror of a terrorist attack in Pahalgam again, not for the first time, and we saw the most serious operation we had in the India-Pakistan relationship, at least since we went nuclear in 1998, or at least after Kargil in 99. And what it told us was that the kind of relationship we have, or the kind of confrontation that we have, is becoming even more complex, because this was a battlefield which was a most collusive battlefield we've ever seen, with Chinese equipment both for offense and defense. But it so happened that the Indian forces did very well, and both our action in Pahalgam was ordered by him, was certainly signed off by Pakistan's general. And this military regime in Pakistan, because there is only a facade of a civilian government, it is a military regime. The purpose of Pahalgam, in my view, was to consolidate this regime. And this was validated by the fact that after the operation, the general promoted himself to Field Marshal. And I think there is a serious view that he might want to become the president of Pakistan and take over in a silent coup very soon. But the more worrying thing from our point of view is the recent chatter that he may want to have another little conflict with India, because that helps him consolidate his regime, and this might be something that he might want to do. But the US-Pakistan relationship, very quickly, that you mentioned, I think that is a unique kind of phenomenon because of the unique Trump phenomenon. It's a very transactional relationship. Pakistan showed its ability to manage this transaction and entice Trump with 4 or 5 different things. One was a counter-terrorism assurance. The other was cryptocurrency and a deal done through various lobbyists on cryptocurrency. There was also talk of critical minerals and oil wealth of Pakistan being promised to the Americans. And there was an issue of Iran that was in play. So all this added up can change very rapidly. So I wouldn't worry too much about the US-Pakistan relationship, but I would worry about the internal developments in Pakistan, which might make it more tempting for them to have a little conflict to India for internally strengthening the regime.
If I may just ask you a follow-up question. Um, 2 follow-up questions. One is, India has drawn a red line and said Operation Sindoor is still on. If there's any act of terror, then we will respond, or we have the right to respond in the way we do. So question over here is, can India sustain it? And what will be that red line? I mean, 1 person killed, 10 persons killed. I mean, how do you define it? I mean, is there some kind of a formula or some kind of a decision on this? This is one. The second is that you talked about Munir having ambitions, promoting himself, possibly wanting to become the president, trying to consolidate his position, therefore embarking on this terrible act of the Pahalgam terror attacks. So we go back about 25, 26 years, and we had Pervez Musharraf, who promoted himself to the CEO of the country, and before that he engineered the Kargil war and also tried to play out. And yet Musharraf became a kind of a peacenik. And the ceasefire agreement of November 1993 was about, of 2003, was that there would be no more violence in Chinoy.
Yes. So, Operation Sindoor, we say, set a new normal. And the new normal was really a new posture, which is a posture of assured retaliation against terrorism. So this is something which has been in play. It's a posture that has developed into a doctrine. So in 2016 was the first time that India took what we call kinetic action against the terrorists in Uri. In 2019 again, when I was in Pakistan, Pulwama got an answer in Balakot. And 2025, this posture is solidified. So the messaging is that if there's another act of terrorism, it will definitely lead to kinetic action and a kinetic response. But, the point is that it will happen if it is clearly established that this is cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan. That's a given. On your question of what would be the metric of a terrorist attack, by definition, I think it should be ambiguous. I should not tell the enemy that whether I'll attack him back if he kills 40 people or 20 people or 10 people or 1 person. Because if you remember in Balakot, India was willing to attack Pakistan because 1 Indian pilot was in Pakistani custody. So it need not be a defined posture. Your cost in terms of what damage India can inflict on Pakistan will also be very high. Your second question about Musharraf, again, that is right. Musharraf was started off by being a hawk. He was the one who had the Kargil misadventure. Now it's judged in Pakistan to be a huge misadventure by the Pakistan army and really a clique of 4 generals who did it. But he promoted himself, and you're right, and I made this argument that the later Musharraf was better than the early Musharraf because he learned his lessons. He wanted to do a deal with India and he came up with a 4-point plan and he also signed. And we actually did get 3 or 4 years of peace until his regime imploded and he sort of was thrown out of power. So at this point of time, this general is showing no symptoms of turning into a Musharraf. He is getting more aggressive. He is showing himself to be a cross between Jinnah ideologically and Zia in action. So he is showing himself to be an India hawk, and he's trying to consolidate his regime at a time when the army is hugely unpopular and the most popular politician of Pakistan continues to be in jail.
Thank you.
Could I just chip in on,
Yes,
on that before you pose a question about some other part of the world? As far as Operation Sindoor is concerned, I was in fact a member of one of the all-party delegations that was sent out, and it is something that conveys very clearly to Pakistan that any future terrorist attack will come at a very high cost. Having said that, the bit about ambiguity is right, because ambiguity is an advantage, and there is no set method by which you can decide what exactly will be the trigger point for the ongoing Operation Sindoor to restart itself. It is currently ongoing in that broad sense, but the trigger point should not be identified, because once you do that, you're revealing your thought process. So it will entirely depend on the nature of the attack, the kind of casualties that take place, the nature of the evidence available, and it should necessarily take place, the retaliation, at a time and place of our choosing. Government would consult the armed forces and then take action. It does not have to be a Pavlovian response that they've done something and therefore we must immediately retaliate in a certain manner. There is also the bit about what next. The likelihood of another terrorist attack is very high, for the simple reason that Pakistan is currently a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, and it will remain so until the end of next year. And it obviously looks to agitating this issue at the international level, not just in Washington, but in capitals all over the world. And the best platform to do this, but there were resolutions in 1965 and 1971 with regard to the ceasefire. And as recently as the 25th of April, you did have a presidential statement of the UN Security Council which spoke about the attack in Kashmir, etc. So it is to be expected that Pakistan will want an attack to take place, a terrorist attack. It will want India to retaliate so that the matter can be agitated at the international level and so that they can also raise the nuclear bogey to further, make the entire world apprehensive about what next. And they will continue to do that with a certain enthusiasm, in my view, because of this opportunity till the end of next year.
Right. Ambassador Chinoy, if I may, before bringing you to China, if I may just ask you a follow-up question of your previous answer to the first question. You talked about India-US defense relations and talked about purchases that we've made. These are obviously the ones that are in public domain. There may be many more other things. Do you think that the current standoff between India and the US, or US standoff against India, could change that part of our relationship, the India-US defense part of it, or will that stay intact?
From my point of view as head of India's largest defense and security think tank, I am of the view that that's not likely to be impacted. Because India and the United States have come a long way, as you said, in the last 25 years. All the foundational agreements have been put in place, including for information sharing, me to mention. There is also an industrial security annex that was concluded. And so we are rock solid in that embrace. Short of an alliance partnership, everything else is in place. And the United States and India, between the two, have the highest number of, largest number of joint exercises, at least the largest that India has with any, the largest number that we have with any country is with the United States. And we are also a major defense partner for the United States. We have been given STA 1 status in terms of foreign military sales and things like that. So I don't think there is any sort of going back on that because in the long run, a robust India with robust military capabilities is in the interest of the United States, and I think even Trump will not be able to totally negate that logic. I think his focus is currently on issues like claiming credit for the ceasefire as a pathway to Nobel Peace Prize and also tariffs, which he thinks are the way to leverage the rest of the world and recast the US position and engagement with the rest of the world. So I'm quite confident that the defense cooperation will continue. We have special forces engaging with one another. There are other multilateral exercises in which we are involved, the Americans are involved, the Australians are involved, like Japan, some of the others may also be there. So all that is expected to continue. But I'm worried that the trust factor which has been affected by this may lead to a slowdown in terms of engagement on technology, especially. So that is of a crucial importance to India as well. So if we can't get that right, then there could be a little stagnancy until the leadership changes or Trump changes his own view.
So I'd like to bring you to China. You've served in China in various capacities, and that was your first posting as well. And Chinese was your first compulsory language. Prime Minister Modi is expected, according to media report now, or sorry, 4 days from now, is going to obviously meet our foreign minister, meet the national security advisor, and several other persons. Do you think that this could be, this could kind of be the beginning of restoration of Sino-Indian relations post-Galwan? And if so, this is a slightly undiplomatic question, can China really be trusted?
So there's a bouquet of questions in what you just said. But let me say that India and China have a very complex relationship. And we've had many ups and downs since we gained independence in 1947 and the People's Republic of China was midwifed in 1949. And overnight, what were otherwise frontiers were suddenly being seen as borders, many sections of which were backed by treaties and things like that, and large sections were disputed as well. So we've had trouble right from day one with China. There was a phase of Hindi in the 1950s, and from there it went generally downhill. But we've had moments of expectation, points of inflection also. I recall being the desk officer for Rajiv Gandhi's visit in 1988, when we believed that a new beginning was being made in our relations, and there were two pillars for that visit in terms of the understanding reached. One was that we would put aside the very vexatious boundary dispute, continue to work on it, but maintain peace and tranquility, keep negotiating. On the other hand, we would not prevent the boundary question from coming in the way of expanding all-round engagement and relations with the People's Republic, including in the economic sphere. And that would be to mutual advantage. In hindsight, I would say that we've had fresh tensions. Again, in a cyclical manner, the cycles keep getting shorter and sharper, but we seem to come out of these as direct to China, and we had made up. Thereafter, we saw 5 years of excellent, splendid bilateral trade and economic ties from around 2001 to 2006. So we've seen these ups and downs before. So the broad point that I would like to make today is that this is a triangle. There are 3 sides to it. We have relations with China, we have relations with the United States, and the both of them also have a very important relationship. Whenever India has had poor relations with China and the United States, the both of them have taken advantage of India. And this happened in the aftermath of our nuclear tests, when Clinton went to Beijing and Chiang Zemin and Clinton came out with a joint communique on South Asia, calling upon India and of course on Pakistan as well to, roll back their nuclear programs and to sign the NPT and the CTBT and all that. So if currently we have difficulties with the United States, it's logical, stands to reason that we should be taking advantage of the recent thaw in our relations with China to take things forward. And since last year, since October 23, the second front, not along the northern borders, but in Pakistan, in a layered manner. During Operation Sindoor, we were contending not only with Pakistan's capabilities, but also with China's capabilities, both, as Ajay said, offensive and defensive. So we've had this jolt, but I think the broad trajectory right now, notwithstanding that, is pointing towards a thaw. And the relationship that China has with Pakistan is not altogether new. It's not as if this is for the first time in our lives that we've discovered such collusion between them. They've always described their relationship as being as deep as the ocean and as high as the Himalayas. And with the North Koreans, they said it's as close as lips and teeth. So here the point is, we are aware of their close relations with Pakistan. No surprise there. And knowledge, nobody has succeeded in de-risking completely from China. Not the United States, not Japan, not Australia, not India, not the EU. Decoupling is only a chimera, it's fiction. But even de-risking has been difficult. That's why we still have trade. After Galwan, we have a huge amount of trade and adverse balance at that. So we have to look for these, nodes to connect, to engage, and to maintain stability. We can ill afford, lack of stability in all our major relationships. And I think Indian leadership and diplomacy is dexterous and fleet-footed enough to be able to do that in a timely manner. As for trust, I think you trust no one. Or what is it that, Reagan had said, was it Reagan? That trust but verify. But there are no permanent enemies. There are only permanent interests. As Disraeli, I don't know if it's apocryphal, but it's attributed to Disraeli in the 19th century, the British Prime Minister. So we trust, I recommend we don't trust anyone.
Right. Ambassador Bisaria, you've served in Russia. I think Russian was your first compulsory language. But before I come to a question on Putin's likely visit to India and of course the talks between President Trump and President Putin scheduled for tomorrow, I had a follow-up question from what Ambassador Chinoy largely directed towards India as well. It's not a relationship as just friends. It's also a lot to do with India, at least on the Pakistani side, definitely, and maybe even the Chinese side. So how does India and China and even India and Pakistan, how do they reconcile the relationship in a situation where you have two countries which are kind of directed towards you, even in the best of times? When, I mean, from India's point of view, even when India-Pakistan relations may be, let us say, hypothetically pretty good, and with China, even if it were to become very good, you still have this factor which is hanging over your head, literally over the head. So how does
Yeah, I think this is one of the central concerns, and it should be, of our foreign policy. And, I think there are no illusions about the fact that the Sino-Pak axis is deep. Yeah, it's a strong strategic relationship, and we saw it play out during Operation Sindhu. It's evolved from the 1960s. But what was a strategic partnership and a close partnership often directed against India, over a period of time has become a deep defense relationship. Pakistan doesn't really have a nuclear program. It was using the Chinese nuclear program. Pakistan didn't really have an air force of much significance, but the Chinese provided, all the air capability they had. And so the Chinese have propped up Pakistan, and what was the Pakistan is using this space to have a relationship with the US because the Chinese are permitting them to do it. Because the Pakistanis, I suspect, are going to the Chinese and saying, look, we are fooling Donald Trump. And the Chinese are saying, yes, go ahead and do it. That's a great idea. Fool him, get him on to give you whatever. Because the Chinese wouldn't accept the US coming and prospecting for minerals in Balochistan and so on, which is their territory. They've been around there for a while. So it's really a collusive game in gaming Donald Trump, who is vulnerable to these. And I think this is something that they're doing. The other point I wanted to make to what Sujan said, I think a good way of framing it is that, in foreign policy, we make some tactical moves, and there are larger strategic long-term concerns. So with China, what Sujan said, I would summarize it as saying that we have a strategic competition in which will go on for the next few decades. There's no doubt about that. But within that, we need to make tactical adjustments, and that is what we are seeing play out with the Modi-Xi meeting of last year at BRICS, which will be followed up with this meeting at the SCO. We have $130 billion of trade. Can we do something to service it? Can we have normal relations in air travel and exchanges and so on, while recognizing that we can't really take a little battle and then get on with the strategic job of aligning to also check the Chinese story. And with Pakistan, we have a strategic interest in Pakistan quietening down and not sending terrorism. But till then, we will have to use tactics like beating them down and setting up a deterrence for terrorism.
Could I just add a little bit, with your indulgence? The Sino-Pak relationship has a long history, and it goes back to the 50s. And what is one of the most remarkable features of this relationship is that its genesis lies in the 1950s, when Pakistan was an active member of a treaty alliance partnership led by the United States, not one, but two. That is to say, CENTO and CIETO, the Baghdad Pact and the Manila Pact. And yet, the US was quite forgiving of Pakistan even then, that Pakistan was loath to or reluctant to actually do anything against Chinese interests. It was never really held to that particular responsibility. And as India-China relations deteriorated in the 1950s, late 50s, the Chinese and the Pakistanis came closer together. And particularly, effected a reset in their ties on the 2nd of March 1963, when Pakistan ceded 5,180 square kilometers of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in the Shaksgam tract across the Karakoram to China. Design for their first atomic device was provided by China, and one of the first tests was carried out by China, proxy test in China for Pakistan.
In Lopnor.
So, in the Lopnor desert. So that's, no. Now why does the United States want to get back into Pakistan? They too have a very old relationship. And there were moments when they were really thick, particularly when the Soviets were in Afghanistan. In the sort of counter-terrorism war on international terror, Pakistan has always been able to reinvent itself and come up like a savior to meet US interests. Most recently, they have turned in, I think, a scoundrel called Sharifullah, Aka Jafar, who was responsible. He is an ISIS-K operative who was responsible for the deaths of 13 US servicemen and 170 Afghans in the dying days of the US presence in Kabul, when a suicide attack was carried out at the Hamid Karzai International. It's a kind of interlocutor or intermediary, potential or otherwise, with China. It can also be used for outreach to Iran, to the Gulf countries, and to perform these counterterrorism functions. Why do the Chinese not object to the Americans coming in? Because they realize that they actually have the Pakistanis well in their camp. And this little bit of latitude actually creates a greater maneuvering space for the Chinese to be able to direct Pakistan in different directions in their own interactions with the United States against third parties, including against India.
And I think it also gives a channel to the US and the Chinese to interact with each other. After all, relations between the two countries were facilitated by Pakistan in the 1970, was it, when Kissinger made that trip to China. Ambassador Bisaria, if I may ask you about Russia, how do you see the talks between President Putin and Trump scheduled for tomorrow? What do you think is likely to happen? And then, of course, the India-Russia relations. Is this going to get any more stronger, getting more strategic? And will this be also sending a message to the US that, kind of a message to the US?
We've always considered strategic autonomy, now call it multi-vector engagement, multi-alignment, that we feel that we need multiple relationships because you can't trust one partner completely, and this is, kind of clear in the Trumpian era. The relationship with the Russians has been strong, and the defense relationship in particular and energy relationship have been under discussion. But we saw that the defense relationship has had great dividends for us. The star of the Operation Sindoor was the BrahMos missile. And I had the privilege of being on the board of BrahMos, the company, for several years. That did a great job in the offensive capacity. And the S-400 was the defensive kind of capacity that was used. We didn't know that we had an iron dome around us, that none of the Pakistan missiles were able to do their job because some of the anti-defense, anti-aircraft position, the air defense systems were very strong. So the Russian equipment was very strong, and that just underlines the fact that India needs equipment from multiple sources, which it can marry together and integrate into systems using ingenious Indian jugaad. So that is the Russian contribution, and we saw the energy relationship, which is being contested. Our economy has seen perhaps a benefit of $50 billion each year for the last few years, thanks to the fact that we had cheaper Russian energy. But we have demonstrated the ability to preserve this even to the and even defying or the United States, because we tell the US that this is a little spat with the US. We had our NSA in Moscow. We will have our foreign minister next week in Moscow. Modi might meet with Putin in the same SCO meeting if Putin shows up there. And then Putin will show up in India for the annual summit, which we've had every year since the year 2000. So all that relationship, we will ask our other partners, the Western partners, including the US, to swallow, because that will continue regardless of the war. Which connects to the meeting in 2 days, well, tomorrow and day after in Alaska. For us, we are now stakeholders in that meeting, because what might happen. So what Trump wants to do a deal with Putin, had that accepted by Zelensky and the Europeans, and then have his Nobel Prize winning photograph, which means he's sitting in the middle and the two sitting on either side. So he wants to have this bilateral meeting with Putin and quickly go on, but he's worried that Putin will game him, as Putin knows how to do. So, but my assessment would be that the Russians are also keen, and they're fatigued and they're keen on an off-ramp in this war from a position of strength. So I think that the position broadly is that Putin and the Russians have two conditions. One, let us keep the 4 territories and Crimea that we already have, and these are the Donbas region, the eastern Ukrainian regions. And 2, give us an assurance in writing that Ukraine will not be part of NATO. There will be no NATO bases in Ukraine. And the West and Trump were trying to first get a ceasefire, but Putin, which will be good news from our point of view, because then we would expect Trump to say, okay, I am now removing the secondary sanctions of 25% which apply to India, or I give 90 more days for that secondary sanction to kick in. So that would be a bit of a relief from the Indian point of view. But either way, I think regardless of the India factor, for all his faults, the one positive thing that Trump will be doing is trying to get peace in the 2 wars in West Asia by reining in Netanyahu, and in Europe by reining in Putin. I think that will be an important contribution despite his crazy tariff wars, which make no economic sense. But also, I think in a strategic sense, the US has admitted that it has been responsible for this war. Because in the 90s, the NATO eastward creep was encouraged by the United States. And Trump has more or less now admitted that his predecessors did this using the Ukrainians as proxies, using NATO as cheerleaders. And if Trump can reverse that and get a peace deal, however ugly that peace deal is, I think it will be good for Europe, it will be good for Russia, it will be good for the United States, it will be good for the world.
Ambassador Chinoy, do you have anything, you want to add anything to this?
Well, all I would say is that, any deal that comes around as a result of either bilateral or trilateral negotiations between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky is likely to be to the detriment and disadvantage of Ukraine, because the territories in question have been legislated constitutionally to be now an integral part of the geography of the Russian Federation, such that even Russia's nuclear posture rests on that. Because Russia's nuclear posture speaks of resort to the nuclear option in the face of an existential threat. And an existential threat is linked to its territorial integrity, the geography of Russia as it exists today, with the inclusion of these, you might call them newly acquired territories. So any deal now or 10 days later or 6 months later is kind of going to be on Putin's terms, in my view. He has been around longer than anyone can remember, 1999 onwards. So he's one of the world's longest serving leaders. He has seen off, if I can use that term, many presidents, even those with 8-year terms, as in 2 terms. So he is not someone unfamiliar with the exercise of raw power by US presidents, which comes in flashes and spurts, in different deal. I'm not too sure. If it's not a very fair deal, one is also not sure of how long it will last. Now, it's not as if past presidents in the United States have not engaged in peacemaking. You may remember photographs of Arafat and Begin, isn't it, in United States in 1992, if I'm not mistaken. One of the first things that Clinton did was to broker that peace between the Arabs and the Israelis for West Asia. But if that had held, why would you have all the trouble you have today? So people have tried so many things. Camp David is known for these things in the US. So let's see how it goes.
Thank you. Ambassador Bisaria, you're in Punjab. And in Punjab, everybody talks about Canada, and you served over there. And Canada was to be yes, which then also the question that it's not been a very comfortable relationship between India and Canada for the last 40 or even more years, starting probably from the nuclear test of 1974 when they accused us of siphoning off the uranium, except perhaps for that short period when Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister. How do you, if you could kind of give us a little understanding of India-Canada relations, why is it where it is?
Well, first the good news. It is in a very good state or very promising state this year compared to how it was 2 years, because the last, from September 2023, the relationship was in its worst ever phase. And that got over in June this year when the 2 prime ministers met at the G7 summit in Alberta and pressed the reset button. So I think we are in the reset mode of that relationship at the political. Both sides did very conveniently is say that the dip in the relationship was thanks to the Trudeau administration, Trudeau himself. And after Trudeau no longer was Prime Minister, there was a natural inflection point to get over it, because he was in a unique situation that he had personalized and he had allowed the anti-India elements to get hold of him politically, and therefore he plunged the relationship in very poor management. And now the new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, has no patience for what was diaspora-led politics. He is now genuinely trying to work in Canada's national interest and not be governed by the diaspora. So I think that is a positive, and we will have new high commissioners in place very soon. The good news about the India-Canada relationship was, despite the fact that the political relationship had plunged, the people-to-people relationship, visas, flights continued. The business relationship continued very well. $100 billion of Canadian in the people-to-people relationship, in visas and flights. But with Canada, everything continued. So I think the short message here is that the Canada relationship will improve, and that will give a special ballast to the business relations, the people-to-people relate as well.
Thank you. If I may just come to the probably last couple of questions. Do you think that we are paying the price of mistakes that were made, fundamental mistakes that were made by our first Prime Minister in the sense of Kashmir, in the sense of Tibet, our policy towards Tibet, our not ensuring that we get all of J&K back, which is our, which was a state that acceded to the Indian Union. Are we paying for those mistakes? Was it because they never understood geopolitics, they did not understand geography, or what?
As far as the early stage was concerned, let me put it this way. It's easy, of course, for us to take a more clinical view now. When people live in their own times, things appear to be far more complex. In the case of India, I would say that as far as the Korean War was concerned, from 1950 to 1953, India under Nehru wanted to play a role. We were to be the chairman of the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission. We were taking active interest in all this, and we couldn't have done that unless all the belligerents agreed to that role for India. That meant that you had to be acceptable to the People's Republic of China for India to play any kind of role in Korea in terms of playing the role of a peacemaker or promoting that kind of settlement there. So to some extent people say that our own national interests vis-a-vis China on difficult issues were brushed aside for sake of a larger role. Now there is some evidence to this effect. If you look at the old literature, when you will not discuss the boundary question with China. Now in 1954, it was already known that the boundary dispute was rearing its ugly head in certain parts, particularly in the middle sector. In the north of Chamoli, there is this disputed tract, meadow called Barahoti, and the Chinese were already probing in 1953 and early 54. And there was a fair idea that China was showing maps claiming large tracts of Indian territory. But the instructions to the Indian delegation were that do not discuss the boundary question. If the Chinese were to raise the boundary question, please disengage and come back. And so in the Panchsheel agreement, India also obviously did not discuss anything about the boundary, but India considered that the Tibet region was a part of China. Now that settled the Tibet matter, because if in 1954 India took the view that Tibet region was a part of China, and we've considered that, then obviously we are not going to be able to change that stand anytime soon. So later, of course, it became, Tibet region as an integral part of the People's Republic of China. Perfect Vision 2020. On Kashmir, for example, when the tribals and the Pakistan, aided and abetted by the Pakistani regulars, swarmed into, Maharaja Hari Singh's territory in 1947, it was also clear that it was a case of aggression. And so when Nehru took the matter to the United Nations, he had taken it as a question of aggression by Pakistan, regulars and irregulars. But at the second meeting of the Security Council, the agenda item was changed by the major powers, the great powers, to the India-Pakistan question, which really equated the victim with the aggressor. And that monkey has never left our back since then. There is no sunset clause on that agenda item. For that matter, there is no sunset clause on UNMOGIP, the UN observer mission for India and Pakistan, which is supposed to observe the ceasefire. We obviously do not give it any kind of credibility or support, which is why at the UN, when the Secretary General's report comes out on ceasefire violations, it invariably says 600, 800 violations by India and 0 violations by Pakistan, because we do not obviously allow them to go and observe anything in the forward areas. So we can say that things could have been done differently with regard to Kashmir. We could have done something different that he engaged in by saying that these were old maps, that China had no chance to revise them. We should have taken it head on in the 50s. And Tibet, I think it's not really much of a card, frankly, because India has always recognized Tibet to be a part of China. And by the way, so have all the other great powers. The United States has never, ever questioned the territorial integrity of the People's Republic of China. So there you have it. None of the great powers have supported Tibet at the UN.
Right. I think this marks a conclusion, or do we have space? Do we have time for one more question, or do we end it here? Oh, right. Okay. So let's open it up to the audience if they have any questions to ask.
Sir,
So we'll just take 2 questions, right?
I am Dr. Bhatti, 1970 IPS. Policy, we do not have good relation with any of our neighbor country except Bhutan. Isn't not the failure of our diplomacy? Secondly, we are not in the habit of accountability. Kargil issue was a big failure, and even Pahalgam. I think we have very poor think tank. It needs to be toned up. And no country, in spite of the fact that we are member of BRICS, we are member of BIMSTEC, we are member of Quad, we are member of G20, no country spoke in our favor except Israel. Thirdly, as you know, sir, the deep state has been very active. They have changed governments in Middle East, Ukraine, Bangladesh, and now they are after us. Have the government any concrete plan to counter it?
Yeah, let me try. I think you had 4 questions. I'll be very quick so that we have space for more questions. You know, I don't buy the argument that India has bad relations with all neighbors except for Bhutan. Because if you break it down and look at your neighborhood, you have 2 adversarial neighbors, China, Pakistan, 2 failing states, Myanmar and Afghanistan. And if you see the other states, we see ups and downs in that relationship. So we have a neighborhood first policy and we practice it asymmetrically. We give them more benefits than we expect from them. And I think over a period of time it balances out. For instance, Maldives started with India out last year, and then Modi was in there and we were talking of a strategic partnership. Sri Lanka, we have given $4 billion for their when they were in trouble. They had internal issues of their own. So I think the short point is that India lives in a tough neighborhood. There will be complicated relations with neighbors of a big power with smaller powers, but an asymmetric relationship is what India practices, and we cannot hold ourselves responsible for processes that are internal to those countries. We don't want to get involved in controlling them. You said Op Sindoor, we didn't get enough support. You know, I would question that, because both the military operation was successful. Diplomatically, no country told India, do not take action against terrorists. No country told India, don't go ahead and do it. What we had was a situation where the public the private diplomacy, which is not visible to us because we didn't necessarily want Pakistan named, as long as we could take action against them and set up deterrence. So, do you want to take on the others?
I agree with Ajay on the first part that it's not true to say that the entire neighborhood first policy has proved unsuccessful. There are ups and downs, and the examples that he cited are right. I would also add that Nepal-India relations currently are quite stable under Prime Minister Oli, and may it long remain so. Now, as far as Operation Sindoor and the aftermath, in terms of the all-party delegations, etc., is concerned, I speak from personal experience because I was a member of one of the all-party delegations, and it's true that we did not go out there to get each one of them to shout from the rooftops that it was Pakistan that did it. We were there to tell them that it was Pakistan that did it. And it's also not true that there was no sort of support, because when we went to, for example, the UAE, we found that the highest, the DR Congo, Sierra Leone and Liberia, which were other countries in West Africa that we visited, and I'll tell you why we went to such countries, all the three observed moments of silence in their parliaments, in their upper houses, in their lower houses, and there was great success because in one fell swoop, we were able to get almost the entirety of their government, their think tanks, their journalists, their social media influencers, even the youth, the diaspora from, India, all of them on the same page. And that's much more effective than trying to do something long distance or trying to do it through your permanent representative to the United Nations in New York. So it was very, very effective. I remember Mr. Kapil Sibal invited me to go on to his show after that. He has a show called Dil Se. And he told me very frankly on the phone, his first question was, or observation was, that your trip was hopeless and wasn't successful, and because nobody condemned Pakistan openly. And I said, it wasn't that we wanted them to say that Pakistan's done this. We were there to tell them, because these are countries that are either in the Security Council right now as non-permanent members, like in the case of Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is also an OIC member state, but DR Congo and Liberia are incoming members of the UN Security Council and will be there for the next 2 years as Pakistan engages in more mischief or its machinations until the end of next year. You will have the likes of Liberia and DR Congo also sitting there for 1 year alongside Pakistan. And so it's
You're talking of Pakistan's deep state? Okay, so I think this, there is a lot of covert action that takes place in the world of diplomacy. Right. Fine. So I think I get your point. There is a lot of covert action that takes place in the world of diplomacy. The US, apart from the State Department, does have the CIA. They do dirty tricks. There is a lot of, we have our intelligence, our counterintelligence and our ways of dealing with it. Not all of it is in the public domain. Not all of it diplomats like Sujan and I know. But let me assure you that we monitor, we recognize and we deal with it.
Okay, we'll just take the last question.
So my view of a stronger India is an India in which there is tremendous focus on economic growth. And this will happen alongside what you call peaceful borders, peace and stability, which will facilitate internal economic growth. Now, economic growth, in my view, should necessarily come from the game is with the industry and manufacturing sector. That's where you can actually create employment opportunities also. The service sector doesn't employ as many as the manufacturing sector. So I'm not sure if we have actually missed all manufacturing waves. We may have missed the first one, we may have missed the second one, but there is still opportunity because nobody can beat the labor cost arbitrage that we have. And as behemoths like China move away from certain types of manufacturing because they are moving up the value chain and their costs are going up as well, this kind of manufacturing is shifting to our part of the world, but it's not without conducive to the MSMEs particularly. I think almost 40% of our exports come from the MSMEs. You can see how MSMEs are central to our exports to the United States as well. So policies have to be geared to encourage the MSMEs. And we don't have the large companies like China has or the chaebols of Korea. Our manufacturing is scattered. And so appropriate policies are required. These policies must be uniform across all states also. If this can be done, if labor and other laws can be improved, if we can create the supply chains for them to receive raw materials and to sell to markets appropriately, then there's no looking back.
And I'll just add to that, that I agree that we have to have a model which is manufacturing plus services-led growth. It can't be one or the other. And what we need is we make 20% of the Apple phones that the world uses, but also now a US plus one opportunity. The US itself has become volatile. People are wondering whether they should put all their money into the United States. So we should be an option for that. And I think, basically we need to become that manufacturing base by increasing the ease of doing business for both our private investment, our domestic manufacturers, and for global players as well.
Okay.
May I ask you a question about Operation Sindoor? After lot of air bases were attacked in Pakistan, there was an attack on Kirana Hills. And the very next day, there were some American radiation sensors, which the news reported, and the American sensors, they came there. Are there any possibility that the nuclear assets of Pakistan are actually not theirs?
When they were asked this question, they said, oh, nobody told us there are nuclear assets in Kirana Hills. Yes, we struck them, but because, so if there were any secret assets and the entrance to the Kirana Hills was struck, then it is not something that we should take responsibility for. So technically, both the Pakistan Air Force has denied it and India's forces have denied it. But if it did happen and we did strike it, then I think full marks to our Air Force.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we have the remarks by Mrs. Kank.
Members of LMA, for those who are left, I'm glad few have gone because I literally feel like a schoolgirl at a debate today. I took down a lot of notes, the entire hour I was noting down. And imagine doing a presidential remark after that. By the way, it's 14th of August today. So we are bloody well celebrating the Independence Day for Pakistan on the eve of our Independence Day, Operation Sindoor. Now, by the time we had started this conversation and invited Ambassador Bisaria had already said yes, somewhere in end of May or beginning of June. I don't know how many times the world has flipped over. And I've been trying to make up my mind on which side we are on. Honestly, May 9th to August 9th, it seems like we were friends with, or at least we were used by US to balance out powers in Asia. And now we are friends with China trying to, foreign minister has probably decided to come and visit us after 3 years. Our prime minister is visiting them after 7 years. We have already started the visas. They are sending us urea, which we badly needed for our farmers and everything, the agriculture reforms, part of it. So yes, we are wooing each other. And back to the school that I was talking about. So somewhere back in the school, I was taught this minus into minus is a plus. And plus into minus is a, and plus into plus is a plus. That was boring. In and out fallings and border issues that we've had with China, it understands that for a very long standing, we've only been good with Russia. It's never left us in a lurch. We've bought a lot of defense from them, and it's been an ally through non-aligned, through Cold War. And it understands where it hurts us. So that's where it decided to hit us. It hit India with the tariffs, hit India with Munir, put pressures from wherever it works. So suddenly there is a minus into minus. We have an enemy's enemy. Pakistan and America are friends. And suddenly China was an enemy, at least playing a proxy war through Pakistan, what, in May 9th? And now we are trying to become friends so that, you know, and it did help a little bit, didn't it? Because the very next day we heard USA saying how India is a strategic partner and we'll sign a deal by October, yada, yada, yada. I suppose that's how it works. Now, Ambassador Bisaria talked about, you know, taking India shouldn't have a defined posture. I love that. Just a couple of takeaways I'll share with you because those are my 2 cents taken from them. Tom Cooper did he's a military analyst, and yesterday he spoke after our Air Force chief had already spoken about the 5 aircrafts that we took down. And he claims that, and he counted, there are about 20 to 30 of them. And what he also said is that India does not tell you how many we've taken down, because he talks about air-to-air combat, he talks about missile-to-aircraft combat, and he also talks about those which were stationed in hangars or in facilities. And he says India doesn't really tell you how many they've taken down because it understands how foolish Pakistan has been, and it wants Pakistan to continue making the same mistakes the next time. So it doesn't even want to let you know that it knows, you know, sort of thing. But that's a great thing. All the same, there's a lot of analysis which also on element of surprise and being unpredictable right there. We haven't been able to dodge that yet completely. I also had a wonderful statement from Ambassador Chinoy saying, don't trust anyone. And I believe in March, Jeffrey Sachs, a Colombian professor who Trump hates passionately, visited India and said something to the tune of saying, don't think US is your friend. US hates Russia and hates China because they're very big. They're a threat to them. The day you grow big, it'll hate you equally. And we thought he was very cynical. But I see a lot of truth in that. And I think there's a lesson to be learned. We are at 4.2 trillion. China is at 19 trillion. US understands that Russia has given it a get-go from the very beginning, from space programs to defense equipment, and is threatened by them, which are big and right there. So if we can understand, as he says, don't trust anyone, we should be able to figure out where we need to head with it. Where is our economic viability? I think that's what China and is right now looking at. after closing doors with USA, where is our economic viability in trade partnerships, and what can we make of that? So we left with one country, like I said, Russia, and Trump has a clue to that. But also in that same point, I'd like to probably talk about NATO. Both the ambassadors talked about Ronald Reagan, Gorbachev, the treaty, 1989, USSR disintegration thing to the book. But USA kept saying it was an enemy. Not one day did USA say, oh yeah, you've reformed now. You know, you're a good boy. You can come into the lab or into the main fold. That never happened. NATO was built to keep Russia out. It's nothing about North Atlantic. Had it stayed around the North Atlantic rim, we would have the least of problems today. So having USA in the backyard of China, in Taiwan, in Okinawa, in South Korea, in the ocean itself, having NATO sit in the Baltics, in Crimea, in Ukraine, wanting to be in Ukraine, I apologize, all that is coming to the backyard of these two major powers, which of course they don't enjoy and relish. And Bill Clinton started that. That's when the NATO expansion started. So I have a very simple solution to what's happening right now with the clown in the town. The eyes are on the prize, we understand. Why don't we all just write a petition to the Norwegian Nobel Committee and say, we all disclaim, have a disclaimer to the Nobel Peace Prize of 2025, please give it to Mr. Trump, and I think we can all be in peace from here. It should be that simple, yeah? That's what the ruckus is about in the House, right? Everything that's moving or being infringed upon everyone's rights here, that's all I see, that's all he wants. He's on a man on fire. Well, there's so much we've learned. I had to come and tell Dinesh sir that it's 1 hour, 20 minutes. And he said I had a list of other questions to ask. But maybe we can all take them over dinner. And I cannot thank both of you enough for coming and enlightening us today. I'm sure we'll be wiser businessmen and community for you to take.
Agarwal, N.K. Agarwal, Miss Mini Rayat, and Dr. Kang to the stage. Mr. Agarwal is not here. Okay. Okay. Mr. Anil. Anilji, are you here? So, Anilji, please give a memento to Mr. Sujan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Ms. Mini, please give memento to Mr. Bisaria. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, just thank you note. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of LMA, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speakers for the evening. Ambassador Sujan, thank you for your deep and insightful analysis of India's current global positioning, from our defense to tariff discussions with the United States and with the dynamics with China. Your clarity on thoughts and knowledge have truly enriched us and our understanding. Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, your in-depth perspective on India-Pakistan relations, recent developments following the Operation Sindoor, and the broader strategic context have been enlightening. You have given us much to think about and reflect on our nation's role in the region, how we can play a major role in Asia and in the world. And we have Mr. Dinesh Kumar, our moderator for the evening. You did a wonderful job. Thank you for steering the conversation so seamlessly, asking the right questions and ensuring the discussion remained engaging and impactful for all of us. I would like to acknowledge all the people who are here, the LMA members, the LMA team which has worked so hard for this evening, and obviously the Radisson team and the photographers and everybody else who's here for the time and patience for the evening. And last but not the least, wishing you all a happy Independence Day in advance. Thank you. So dinner is on.